This evening we have Shaun Taylor with a presentation on the rich history of Freemasonry in Gawler, serving for his 5th term as Worshipful Master of the Gawler Freemasons Lodge of Fidelity No. 5, as well as the Hall's Facility Manager, Historian and Archivist. Shaun is a dedicated community leader with a deep commitment to regional heritage. His diverse background spans work in the motor, water supply and wine industries, as well as 20 years managing work, health, safety and risk at Xavier College, prior to his 2023 retirement. Beyond his professional life, Shaun has served as a Justice of the Peace since 1989 and spent years as a Christian ministry pastor, demonstrating a lifelong dedication to civic duty and community care that promises an engaging and insightful evening for us this evening. So please welcome Shaun Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that wow, I've got to live up to that now. Thank you, but that introduction means a lot. And thank you for the warm welcome, everyone. Can you, I'll check the, there we go.
It was me.
Thank you. Did anyone miss anything I was saying? I've got a fairly loud voice, so if you don't hear me at some time, just wave or something, and I'll do that. As well as the thank you for the introduction and everyone else, thanks for being here this evening. I've just got to mention my personal fan club, Masonic members of the lodge, but also friends and ex-colleagues who have turned up tonight to support me. So I thank you very much.
Your wife.
I am my wife, yeah, thanks. Thanks for the reminder there, Robert. I'll probably get in trouble for that by the time I get home there, but thank you. Yeah, she's sitting right there in the front row. Yeah, stick your hand up, Shaun. Okay, all right. Let's get on with this. Now, that's just a quick explanation. That's a new crest for the Lodge of Fidelity, which we introduced basically for our 175th anniversary 2 years ago. There is a bit of a story behind it. Obviously, the square and compass is the main symbol of Freemasonry. The wheat obviously represents the agricultural heritage and background of Gawler and region, and the grapes, obviously a bunch of grapes, our proximity to the Barossa Valley. Now the two lines, that's a little bit more obtuse. They represent railway tracks, so that represents the industrial aspect of the history of Gawler. So I think we covered everything off in that little crest. So okay, let's see where we're going here. Here we go. Okay, so there's a bit of information I need to give you first, and then we'll gradually build up into the actual history of Freemasonry in Gawler. Some years ago, I was invited by the late Brian Tom to give a presentation on the Lodge of Fidelity and Freemasonry in Gawler, specifically to this group. But for various reasons, it was put on the back burner until at last year's Gawler Village Fair. Paul approached me and invited me to once again consider making this presentation. So over the past 8 months, I've been sweating over this, and I've written and rewritten and edited and re-edited and torn it up and redone it again, and I didn't realise it would be quite so difficult to try and do this. I don't know why. I mean, I'm the Lodge of Fidelity's historian, archivist, research officer, educator and chief cook and bottle washer. But for this, I guess I just wanted to really get it right. So please bear with me. There are some things that I may go over more than once, but I'll explain some of this as we go. Okay, where are we? Right. This is the thing about this is that this is a topic that is deeply entwined with the history of Gawler Gawler in particular, but indeed South Australia in general. And realistically, to cover this topic in depth, it would take a series of presentations. What I decided to concentrate on tonight is people, places and things. And those who are members of the history group will understand those headings, which I actually borrowed from your website. So I thought I would try and keep it in that tone for easy reference. People, places and things. Okay, now, to begin with, I think I need to give you a bit of perspective, and it's first necessary to give you some general background on the history of Freemasonry, as well as to clear up a few common misconceptions about what Freemasonry is or isn't. So Freemasonry's modern history dates back to 1717, when the first official Grand Lodge of Speculative Masons was formed in London by 4 speculative lodges, which eventually went on to sponsor many lodges across the British Empire and of course today's Commonwealth. Shortly thereafter, Scotland and Ireland also formed their own Grand Lodges, eventually reaching the 4 corners of the globe. While there are a number of theories on Freemasonry's actual origins, the traditional history is that it dates back to the guilds and lodges of operative stonemasons and builders who constructed the great European cathedrals and palaces of the late medieval to Middle Ages. As the operative stonemason's craft started to decline, with the end of the Renaissance and the eventual coming of the Industrial Age, Freemasonry morphed into the speculative lodges we know today. And as the guilds and lodges started to worry about their membership, they started to accept membership from non-operative men. Now, one common misconception about Freemasonry is that we're a secret society. That's not true. If we were a secret society, it's pretty unlikely that I would be standing here this evening talking to you. It would also be very unlikely that we would have our lodge building, our lodge hall, in one of the most prominent locations in the town of Gawler, on the corner of Lindop Road and Union Street, opposite Pioneer Park. But it must also be said that our early Gawler Freemasons were very active in the community, perhaps even more so than today, and certainly didn't hide their affiliations. Any search on Trove from the 1900s will turn up many references to Freemasonry in general, and locally the Lodge of Fidelity in particular. Those references may refer to not only Masonic meetings, but also significant community events, such as cornerstone laying ceremonies, and even picnics, which frequently involve Freemasons, both officially and unofficially. Misconception 2. Some people believe that Freemasonry is a religion. Sorry to disappoint you, it most certainly is not. First and foremost, it's a fraternity with a basis of moral responsibility, charity and benevolence. Neither is Freemasonry politically aligned, counting among its members people from both sides of the political spectrum. In fact, in Masonic meetings, it's strictly forbidden to discuss party politics or sectarian religion. Okay, a bit more background. Every story...
Oh, what have I done?
Thanks, Paul. Every story starts somewhere. And like I said before, if I were to just dive into the history of the Lodge of Fidelity, you wouldn't get the perspective that I'm hoping you'll get on what Freemasonry and the Lodge locally is about. So, the 19th century was of course an era of profound social and industrial change and growth, and the town of Gawler certainly embraced that to the fullest from its earliest days, combining not only the rural and industrial aspects of early life in South Australia, but also the more refined pursuits that go with a civilised society, those pursuits of art and philanthropy. From the mid-19th century, Mutual societies, friendly societies and fraternal organisations abounded in the town of Gawler. And as the town grew, so did the need for care and support for those in distress. Bear in mind, this was a time when there was no government social welfare, and about the only welfare that was around besides these organisations was from the churches. At a time when, apart from churches, membership of those societies and organisations provided their members with assistance if unemployed, widowed, or suffering from illness and injury. And this was well before the days of government welfare. In Gawler, we had the Oddfellows, of which there were two orders, the Foresters, the Druids, and the temperance-based Rechabites, to name but a few of the more prominent organisations. And then, of course, there were the Freemasons. While all of the aforesaid organisations contained some sort of ritualistic element to their meetings for the purpose of inducting new members and instilling the lessons of charity and good morals, it was the Freemasons who stood out for their pomp and ceremony and their deep traditions. Strictly speaking, even though Freemasonry does support its members and their connections, and today provides broad and sometimes significant donations to various charities and other worthy causes such as medical research and men's health, Freemasonry was not, and is not strictly speaking, a service club or a mutual society, even though we do have some of those elements. We are, of course, as was said, a fraternity first and foremost. Okay, now we're going to try and get down to some of the nitty-gritty here. The story of Freemasonry in Gawler starts in 1834, when the first Freemasons Lodge in South Australia, that was the Lodge of Friendship, was formed in advance at the Adelphi in London. And that's a picture of the Adelphi there, which still exists, and there's a series of theatres in London today. It is unclear exactly when the warrant of that lodge actually arrived on our shores, but it was of course some 2 years later. But it would have been on one of the ships that followed the arrival of the HMS Buffalo. Freemasonry at that time was well represented among those early settlers by the likes of brothers Kingston, Goodger, Morford and Gilbert, names we're probably all familiar with, who were in attendance at the proclamation of South Australia on December the 28th, 1836. And I'd also add at this point, it's worth noting that while Colonel William Light and Boyle Finnis were not Freemasons that we're aware of, there is no doubt that they associated with the aforementioned well-known brethren of that time, and would no doubt have been exposed to Freemasonry in one form or another, even if it was just social events. By 1848, 3 additional metropolitan lodges had been formed in Adelaide. They were, of course, starting the Lodge of Friendship, then Adelaide Lodge, also known as St John's Lodge, Lodge of Harmony and United Tradesmen's Lodge, respectively. It was members from both Adelaide Lodge and Lodge of Harmony that would go on to sponsor the formation of the Lodge of Fidelity as South Australia's first country lodge in 1849. From the very beginnings of the town of Gawler, there would have been townsfolk who were Freemasons. So by 1848, there was much interest in forming a local lodge, given that travelling to Adelaide for a lodge meeting in those days would have been probably a 2-day affair, travelling by horse. The first preparatory meeting to form the Lodge of Fidelity was held on New Year's Day in 1849. And as the minutes record, it was held at Brother Colton's Hotel, with further planning meetings held on the 8th and 16th of January. The lodge was then officially consecrated on the 30th of January as Lodge number 854 English Constitution, with the first Worshipful Master being Dr. David Marney. He was installed and his officers invested at that same meeting. In 1863, along with other lodges under the English Constitution, the Lodge of Fidelity would be renumbered to become number 584. And it's interesting because for a long time we thought the lodge has actually got 2 warrants, and I couldn't get a decent picture of them. I'm sorry, because of the lighting and they're under very old glass and everything else. We've got 2 warrants. There's the original warrant from the United Grand Lodge of England, and it says number 854. Then we've got a provincial warrant from the Provincial Grand Lodge of South Australia, and it says 584. And for a long time, it was said that this was just a transposition of numbers. It's not. And I've proven over the past few years that it's well documented that the Grand Lodge of England changed their numbering system for some reason. Who knows? Probably just bureaucracy. But anyway, they confused a lot of people. And also the 3 lodges, or 4 lodges that preceded Lodge of Fidelity, they were renumbered too, which just cemented that. Now, what I'll do, that's very hard to read, and honestly, our early minutes, there's some minutes where the writing is almost like calligraphy and beautiful, and there's others which are very difficult to read. So I think I've transcribed this, and I'll just read it because I think it's worth noting. Minutes of the transactions of the Lodge of Fidelity number, and there's no number because they hadn't been warranted at the time of this meeting. The Free and Accepted Masons, Gawler. A few brothers of the craft of Free and Accepted Masons residing in Gawler town, having frequently conversed together respecting the formation of a lodge, met by appointment at Brother Colton's Hotel on 1st of January 1849. Present were Brother David Marney, Lodge of Harmony, Brother John Old, St. John's Lodge, Brother Thomas Old, Brother Mackay, Brother Ed Magnus, Brother Debney, and Brother H. Colton of Lodge of Harmony. Brother Marney presided. It was proposed by Brother John Old, seconded by Brother Ed Magnus, that a lodge of Free and Accepted Masons be formed in Gawler town. That motion was carried. It was proposed by Thomas Old, seconded by Brother Colton, that the lodge be named the Lodge of Fidelity of Free and Accepted Masons. That was also carried. Now, a quick side note. Several years ago, all of our early minutes were digitised. Andrew, can you remember if that was up to 1950s?
Yeah, it was 50 years.
Yeah.
From when we did it.
Yeah, so now that they have been digitised, one of the things we really want to get on with in the lodge is having them transferred to the Mortlock Library for safekeeping. So it's something we'll arrange hopefully sooner rather than later. Anyway, to move on with the body of this talk. In 1884, the Lodge of Fidelity voted, along with other lodges of the Provincial Grand Lodges of England, Ireland and Scotland, to form the Grand Lodge of South Australia, which would at the beginning of the current century become the Grand Lodge of South Australia and Northern Territory. Interestingly, the Grand Lodge of South Australia and Northern Territory is the premier Australian Grand Lodge, being formed before both Victoria and New South Wales. And the Lodge of Fidelity in South Australia is the premier country lodge. Although there was a little trouble maybe about a year ago where our Grand Lodge declared that we would no longer be classified as a country lodge, that we would become a metropolitan lodge. We voiced our displeasure, but in the end we decided it wasn't worth fighting. As far as we're concerned, the Lodge of Fidelity is and will always be a country lodge. They can, call us whatever they like, but it doesn't make any difference to the membership of this lodge. Our heart is in the country. Anyway, from there on in, the Lodge of Fidelity will become Lodge number 5, the premier country lodge in this jurisdiction. Today, the Lodge of Fidelity is the 3rd oldest surviving lodge in South Australia and Northern Territory, being preceded only by the Lodge of Friendship number 1 and Adelaide Lodge number 2. Lodge Harmony and United Tradesmen's Lodges both surrendered their warrants some time ago. Okay, of course, this is primarily about the Lodge of Fidelity. But Gawler Freemasons, as we tend to call ourselves for public usage, is more than just the Lodge of Fidelity. It also includes Gawler Master Masons Lodge number 14, which was consecrated in 1912. That's represented by the little keystone there. Gawler Royal Out Mariners Lodge number 14, which was consecrated in 1957, and of course that's represented by the rainbow, the Dove of Peace, and Noah's Ark. And then Gawler Royal Arch chapter number 29, which was consecrated in 1939, which is represented by the Star of David. Okay, so you just bear in mind something I just want to let you know. I don't really go into those a lot because this is focusing on Lodge of Fidelity, but there is more to Freemasonry in Gawler than just the Lodge of Fidelity. Okay, we'll move on to people. From its second official meeting, held February 27, 1849, membership of the Lodge got off to a flying start, with 2 initiations and 1 joining member, as well as another 3 propositions and 2 candidates in waiting, something any lodge today would covet. Over the ensuing 50 years, the Lodge of Fidelity would see its membership increase from the original 7 founding members to a membership of over 50. Membership would then eventually reach its peak just after World War II, reaching around 120 members. Today, membership stands at about 30, with several candidates currently waiting on initiation. As far as people go, some of the more notable early members of this lodge, and names which will be familiar to many here, and some may even be a surprise. Of course, Dr. David Marney, who was our first Worshipful Master, Henry Colton, John Old, Thomas Old, George Gossard, Walter Duffield, Otto Schomburg, Richard Schomburg, Carl Mookie, John Rudel, S.B. Rudel, of course James Martin, T.F. Lutish, Canon Coombs, William Barnett, Dr. Knott, Dr. W.H. Lewis, Dr. W.H. Popham, Dr. F.W. Home Popham, W.R. Lewis, B.E. DeLand, John Martin, Reverend Lumsden, and Frederick May. They were all members of the lodge, many of them past masters. Frederick May is a new one to the list, and oddly enough, going through, and I'll come to it later on, looking for a particular name through the old membership registers, I noticed Frederick May. And I thought, would that be one of the May brothers? I had always thought they weren't members. Well, apparently it's only Frederick May, and I've corroborated this through his job. It said Frederick May was a machinist. Now, oddly enough, in the membership register it just says James Martin was a machinist as well. It doesn't say he was an industrialist or anything else, just machinist. It's very simple terms they used back then. So I guess there's a tiny little bit of space there for error, but I'm pretty sure Frederick May, given that title, was a member of the lodge. So I was happy to find that. As the lodge progressed from its Golden Jubilee and into the 20th century, among further members of note were S.H.A. Bird, John Rawling, R.H. Barnett, Reverend S.T.C. Best, D. Dunsmore, and J.C. Jacob, to name but a few. Just coming back a little bit to, I mentioned before about Gawler Mark Lodge. One member of Gawler Mark Lodge, and he wasn't a member of Lodge of Fidelity. I can't remember the first name, I'm sorry. was a Jacob who lived at Rowland Flat, and we're pretty sure he was a vigneron. So we're pretty sure that he was related to Jacob's Creek wine. Now, much could be said regarding the previously mentioned members and their achievements and contributions to not only the Lodge of Fidelity, but of course Gawler in general. But as is so well known by many here, it's not really within the scope of this presentation to go into further detail about their history and past and their achievements, although some of these identities will receive an honourable mention as we continue with this presentation. I think you've actually seen this one before when you visited the lodge, so yeah. He's still hanging proudly there in the ante-room of the lodge, along with many portraits. It's worth mentioning that a lot of the early past masters of the various lodges there had their portraits taken and are still hanging there in our ante-room and entry hall. And of course the portraits were from merchants, so a Gawler icon. Oddly, for such an old and esteemed lodge, the Lodge of Fidelity has only so far ever produced one Grand Master in its 177-year history and the 142-year history of the Grand Lodge of South Australia and Northern Territory. And that person is most worshipful brother Graham Bollenhagen. Graham lived in Gawler for many years. Graham served a 3-year term from 2003 to 2006, and recently, in honour of Graham's service as Grand Master, we dedicated the lodge room, the Graham Bollenhagen room, in acknowledgement of his service. This complements the name of the ante-room, which is the David Marnie room. Although not members of the Lodge of Fidelity, but with a connection to Gawler, were some other acclaimed Freemasons, and I think they should get a mention as well. So Freemasons who were not members of the Lodge, but have a connection with Gawler. Explorers, Captain Charles Sturt and John McKinley, who were respectively acknowledged by, of course, the magnificent McKinley Memorial on Murray Street, adjacent Pioneer Park. Now, that's an old photo. I borrowed that, I think, from the history team page as well, I think, Paul. I tried to get my own photo of that with the new wall and the memorial all nicely cleaned up, and there was just traffic, and I wasn't going to go there 6 o'clock in the morning to get a clear picture, so sorry, it's an old picture. And the plaque next to it commemorates Captain Charles Sturt's visit and camp. And that is, and forgive me for being blunt here, not so grand. Being stuck in a dingy little alcove between what are currently 2 vacant shops. It'd be really nice at some time if more could be made of that. I think it's a bit of a shame because both of these explorers contributed so much to South Australia and even to Freemasonry in general, so, and of course Gawler. On a lighter note, Sir Samuel Way is also known to have officiated at the laying of various cornerstones in Gawler of various buildings, particularly the Lodge Hall, but also he was present and dedicated the keystone of St George's Bell Tower. And that's probably something else which could be included in a talk at some other time. To wrap up the segment on people, there is something that does require correction. For some years it was believed that the author of Gawler's first official history, Ephraim Henry Coombe MP, was a member of the Lodge of Fidelity. But this has recently been discounted, and it's now thought that the references in various registers and minutes were actually related to his brother Thomas Coombe. However, this is still disputed by one researcher, but with no hard evidence forthcoming as yet. So I'll acknowledge Helen Hennessy at this stage for pointing this out to me. And look, it was with some embarrassment after we gave a talk at one time. I mentioned that he was a Freemason, and you said, I don't think he was. So humble pie from me anyway on that one. But secretly, I do wish that this other person, who I won't name, a Freemason, does find something and says, Shaun, I told you so. Anyway, you'll be the first to know, Helen, if that ever does happen. Okay. Places. Right, we all know this building. As mentioned earlier, the Lodge of Fidelity held its first meetings at Colton's Hotel, variously known at different times as the Golden Fleece and the Old Spot. I think this one might be out of sequence for some reason. Anyway, we can come back to it if we need to. But I will go through it just in case I find it too difficult to come back. The connection here, and I'll go into it later on, is that the Gawler Bunyip originally was the Journal of the Humbug Society, and was in effect started by Masonic brothers William Barnett as manager and Dr. George Knott as first editor. And of course there were others who weren't Freemasons that were involved with that too, but they were the Freemasons involved with that. Okay, so hopefully I'm back in sequence. Here, yes, thank you, good, all right. So, as mentioned, the Lodge of Fidelity had its first meetings at Colton's Hotel. In 1873, the Lodge moved on to the respectable venue. Oh, sorry, I missed a bit there. Then in 1857, the Lodge moved to the Globe Inn. There's a nice little plug there for flow traffic control. As you can see, as I said earlier, it is really difficult trying to get a clear picture of something in Gawler these days if you don't want traffic. You know. Okay, there we go. There's another borrow from the Gawler History team page. I would have been lost in some of these without it, so thank you to the history team. So that was the Lodge's second meeting place from 1857 to 1871. In 1873, the Lodge moved on to the respectable venue of the Gawler Institute. No, it didn't. It moved. It moved to the Commercial Hotel, now the Southern. Right, let's see if we can move now. And here we go. Yes, the Lodge did move on to the respectable meeting place of the Gawler Institute. That was initially 1873 to 1880. And they moved back again between 1881 and around 1890. There were some dates that even in the minutes of the Lodge were not really clear, but I'll get on to that shortly because there's a bit more history in that. Okay, so that was a meeting place for a short, brief time around 1880. That's the old Oddfellows Hall, which has in recent times been a bicycle shop and a hairdressing salon, and is currently vacant and up for lease. I did borrow these older pictures because I thought it gave a bit more authenticity to the history and the age of the Lodge, and I was sick of trying to photograph traffic as well. All right, what we know as the ANZ Bank. Finally, in the 1890s, the opportunity arose for the Lodge to purchase a permanent home of its own, and that was in the Bank of Adelaide building next door to the Gawler Institute. The bank sold apparently at a very good price, apparently too good to refuse. And even though this building was supposed to be the permanent home of the Lodge of Fidelity, it seems it was such an enviable location for banks that another bank made a further offer several years later. Again, an offer which was too good to refuse. And our astute members of the time duly sold the building back to the bank, doubling their original purchase price, and after only 2 or 3 years. This would then go on to later fund the current hall, which we've already discussed, on the corner of Lindott Road and Union Street. In the meantime, the lodge resumed its meetings for a short time at the Gawler Institute until moving into its permanent home in 1904. The construction of the current building, and I think I have a picture there, yes, commenced in 1903, with, as previously mentioned, the cornerstone being ceremonially put into place on December the 5th by Sir Samuel Way, who was the then Grand Master of the Freemasons of South Australia. The festive hall, which we hire out to the public today, was added in 1923. That's the cornerstone, or the keystone, that was put into place. We believe it contains a time capsule as well. So if, and I hope it doesn't happen, but if we ever have to sell the building, we will probably recover that, but we'll see what happens. Other things. Many here would of course be aware of the origins of our beloved Gawler Bunyip newspaper, and I won't go back because I'll probably lose my place trying to find that slide again. Which of course started as the Journal of the Humbug Society. The Humbug Society was in effect started by Lodge of Fidelity members, as mentioned, William Barnett and Dr. George Knott, with the aim of spoofing the pretentiousness and pomp of the many fraternal and friendly societies that, as has already been mentioned, abounded in Gawler at the time. The first edition of the Bunyip caused a bit of a storm, and not only in Gawler but also in the Lodge of Fidelity, as fellow member of the lodge, Dr. William Home Popham, sued the Bunyip for libel, which pitted him against fellow members of the lodge, Dr. George Knott and William Barnett. However, after financial settlement, the incident was soon forgotten with a flim-flam-bam sham. Now, I tried to look up who might have presided in the Gawler Magistrates Court when the financial settlement was made, and I couldn't find it. But I got a funny feeling it might have been one of the Rudels, oddly enough. So I'd like to confirm that. So a bit of additional research that will go on there. One thing that is obvious is that Freemasons of the day, with some help from members of the Oddfellows, Foresters and Druids and other clubs, and bearing in mind that in those days members of the various clubs were probably members of more than one organisation, and I know there were a number of members of the Lodge of Fidelity who were also Oddfellows. In those days they had no compunction at poking a bit of fun at themselves and not taking things too seriously, which is perhaps a lesson for us Freemasons today. However, in the spirit of the Humbug Society and that history that exists here in Gawler, several years ago we resurrected a society based along similar lines, and it's called the Masonic Order of the Secret Repository. I always have to be very careful how I say repository. I have made the mistake before, but the Order of the Secret Repository is there just to lighten things up. It's not an official body, but we joke about it a little bit in Lodge, and we have a little ceremony, and members are given a degree. Freemasonry, Masonic members are in degrees: first degree, second degree, third degree, and eventually in some orders all the way up to 33rd degree. Well, in the Order of the Secret Repository, members are either eventually become a 33 1/3 degree. They said at one time there was a 45th degree or even a 78th degree, but that was consolidated down to 33 1/3 anyway. That's sort of digressing a bit, but the spirit of the Humbug Society lives, trust me. Okay, where are we? Right, similarly, many here will be well aware of the Song of Australia and the history of how that song came about. But not many may be aware that it has a connection with Freemasonry in South Australia. No doubt thanks to those members of the Gawler Institute Board, who were also members of the Lodge of Fidelity, and there were at least several of them on that board. And what many wouldn't know, unless you're in Freemasonry, is that the Song of Australia is still proudly sung to this day at our after-supper meetings, what we call the festival, and not just here in Gawler, but across the whole of South Australia and Northern Territory. And I think if you were to ask many Freemasons, would they prefer as our national anthem the Song of Australia or Advance Australia Fair, I think you will generally be told the Song of Australia. We do still sing Advance Australia Fair at the opening of our business meeting, but at our festival we're a bit more relaxed, having a few toasts and a bit of fun. It is the Song of Australia. And in Gawler we sing it with gusto, trust me. Okay, this is the original secretary's desk of the lodge. When I restored this myself about 7 years ago, among the contents found inside were a number of ink quill pens, and you'll see them on the right hand side. A candlestick holder, a little galvanised candlestick holder on the left, and it's not in the picture, but there was a very, very old bottle of Beck's headache tablets. Now, I'm sure our current secretary, and I hope he doesn't mind me, Andrew, can you stick your hand up, please, would certainly know all about the requirement for having headache tablets when secretary of a Masonic lodge. Andrew does a fantastic job for us. But he sits at a different desk. In fact, I think that desk is actually better than the one he sits at these days, but we might have to look at that in the future. Now, here we see the original treasurer's cash box. Unfortunately, unlike the secretary's desk, the cash box was found completely empty. It measures approximately 24 inches by 12 by 12, and I've used inches because of the age of the item, and it appears to be made of the same type of timber as the desk. And in fact, there's a number of items of furniture made from that timber. And again, we don't know who made half of this stuff. A lot of things went on in the lodge which were not minuted or recorded, but we'd love to know. But anyway, some things they're just what they are, I'm afraid. Would have been nice to find some money in there though, that's for sure. Even if only for historical purposes. Okay, this lead-like window is in the entry hall of the lodge. The main window of this was dedicated to Lodge Secretary at the time in 2003, late brother William Russell, while the top door was dedicated to a member, Worshipful Brother Victor Curd. It was designed and made by Violet Russell and was donated and installed in 2003. It can still be seen there. It's got a thick Perspex cover on the front, unfortunately. Okay, now this is interesting. In this slide you'll see a picture of the original Master's chair of the lodge. Now I've got a question. Has anyone here seen a similar or exactly the same chair anywhere else in Gawler? There is one other. There could be more than one, but I've found one other. It's actually in the offices of Rudall and Rudall in their waiting area. and it's exactly the same. One time I'll probably pluck up the courage to ask them if they have any history on their copy of the chair. But I like to think, and I can't prove it, that maybe it was donated by the Rudels to the Lodge of Fidelity when they moved into their current hall as the Master's chair. Okay, in this picture there's two sabres. I would really love to have brought them along tonight as a prop, but unfortunately, pardon me. Unfortunately, with the current prohibited weapons regulations, we're not allowed to remove them from the lodge unless it's under the care of a registered restoration expert or historian. So, unfortunately, they stay there. But the interesting thing is, it's believed that one of these sabres belonged to the Gawler Volunteer Rifles and was in the possession of Dr. William Hone Popham, while the other saw active service during the Boer War. As I say, unfortunately, we're unsure exactly which one is which. I've got a feeling, looking at what the markings and everything else, that the one on the left of the picture was the one from the Boer War, and the one on the right was the one that belonged to the Gawler Volunteer Rifles and Dr. Popham. But of course, if anyone visits the lodge, you can see these in person. Okay, in this picture, you'll see a portrait painted by artist Andrew McCormack. He was the Parliament, did a lot of portraits in the Parliament of South Australia. This portrait was dated 1901, and it hung in our entry hall for quite some years. Then, after we had problems with an inundation of stormwater, we were concerned, because of the moisture levels and everything else, that it was starting to deteriorate. So we contacted the Gawler Council, and after some negotiations, it was decided that we would gift it to the town of Gawler, which happened in 2017. Well, then the town of Gawler restored it completely. They used Art Lab. They paid the cost, which is a cost that the Lodge of Fidelity just could never have afforded. So we were just glad that the portrait was saved and restored. And of course, in this photo, there's then Mayor Karen Redmond receiving the portrait after it had been restored. Myself and Worshipful Brother Bradley Furlong, who was the Worshipful Master of the Lodge of Fidelity at the time. All right, we're getting close to the end. How are we going for time?
Oh, fine. Perfect. Even time for questions.
That'd be great. Okay. Before I conclude my presentation, I must make mention of October's Gawler History Team presentation, which will be by Sharon Mansell on Dr. Otto Schomburg and the Bucksfeld people and community. Otto Schomburg, his achievements have often been overshadowed by his more well-known brother and brother in Freemasonry, Dr. Richard Schomburg. Yet no less amazing. There is a group of dedicated people here in Gawler who have been working hard over the past few years to not only restore Otto to his rightful place in our local history, but to also restore his memorial at the, and I'll say Bucksfeld with the S, at the Bucksfeld Old Historic Lutheran Cemetery. So if you wish to hear more about that, and it's very interesting, please attend here in October. I'm sure Paul can give you more details. So there's obviously a portrait of Otto Schomburg, and that is Otto's current grave and memorial, which honestly is quite sad, and which this group are working on to restore. When you compare that to his brother's memorials, it's quite a contrast. So, but you'll certainly hear more about that in October, and I don't want to cut Sharon Mansell's lunch, so to speak. Okay, to wrap up a little bit, I'm not sure, what have I got after this? Just some sources and references. Finally, as the Lodge of Fidelity heads towards its bicentenary year in 2049, it's fair to say that after several decades of declining membership, there seems to be a growing interest from younger men in joining Freemasonry again, which bodes well for the future of our lodge and craft. One vexation, however, is the ever-increasing cost of maintaining our current building, with issues compounded by pigeons and consequent costly roofing and guttering problems, which is an issue unfortunately not confined to our lodge hall, which plagues a number of historic buildings within this town. Whatever the case, I'm sure the Lodge of Fidelity will continue in one location or another. After all, we haven't always met in our own building. We've met in a number of places, and I'm sure if we had to, we could do that again. I'm sure the lodge will continue and remain an integral part of the vibrant town, the colonial Athens, of which it is so proudly connected. For my part, my aim is to compile a complete and comprehensive history of the Lodge of Fidelity and Freemasonry in Gawler. Not for 2049, because I don't know whether I'll make that. I'd like to think so. But rather in time for the sesquicentenary of the Grand Lodge of South Australian Northern Territory in 2034. Finally, I thank you for your time and interest, and I'm happy to take any questions. If I can't answer your question now, I'll take your details and I'll certainly get you an answer. If you don't wish to talk publicly, see me over a cup of tea afterwards, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have. So, great.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shaun. That was an absolutely magnificent talk. Now we've got open forum. Who would like questions? Any questions? Helen, yes. Oh, we've got a few. They're popping up. Who says?
What do you talk about? What do you do at the meetings?
Okay, so what we do in Freemasonry, and thank you for mentioning that. Oh, that's better.
Is it? Could you turn the light on?
As mentioned before, we're a fraternity, and we're a fraternity based upon being good members of society, charity, benevolence. So what our ceremonies do, we have three parts to any meeting. We've got a business part where we do our minutes, our finances, correspondence, that sort of thing. Then we have our ceremonial part of the meeting. Then we have supper. So the ceremonial part. What we do, we have little short ceremonies, which instill in our members that sense of being an upstanding member of the community, a pillar of the community, if you like to use a Masonic term. We give them information about being a good member of society, a good citizen. And that's really all it is. Yes, we do have some funny handshakes and some passwords and things like that. But really, those things are just tests of character, and they can be found on the internet. But if you do go looking on the internet, no problem, I don't have a problem. Just be wary, because there's a lot of rubbish there too, so just be mindful. But that's what our meetings are about. And of course, all these other organisations I mentioned before, the likes of the Odd Fellows, the Foresters, Druids, even the Rechabites, they all had ceremonies at the time that were about instilling in their members good morals and different things connected with being good citizens. So that's all we do. It's a test of character, really, that we don't tell people exactly what we do in our funny handshakes. But I honestly think if a lot of people were invited into our ceremonies, they would actually be a little bit surprised and think, oh, that's a bit mundane, and it's not what I thought it would be. You know, there's no flaming fires or anything like that. It's all pretty much above board. We don't embarrass our members or hit them with table tennis bats or anything like that in the ceremonies. So it's all quite controlled. So thank you.
Yes, Helen.
I was just going to see if I could jog your memory. You talked about the Jacob being part of not the Lodge of Fidelity.
Yes, Gawler Mart Lodge, yeah.
So there were two brothers. One was
Yes.
William and one was John.
Yes,
And William helped actually laid out Gawler town, William Light.
yes.
Can you remember which of those?
I will have to look that up, and I will.
Yeah, it'll be worthwhile because if it's William,
Yeah.
then he's obviously got statewide significance.
Pardon
And
me.
the fact that he's coming in from the valley back to Gawler shows he's continuing his interest in connection to the
Yeah,
town.
I will certainly look that up.
Any other questions? Yes,
Many
David.
decades ago, I knew some Freemasons, and they were very formally dressed. Black bow ties and black suits.
Yes.
Very, very shiny shoes. That I remember.
Absolutely.
Is this still the case?
It still is, yes, yeah.
So that's beautiful.
Yeah, Freemasons still wear a uniform, if you like, and thank you, that's a great question. Most of our members wear a dinner suit to lodge with black bow tie, white shirt, black shoes. Not all patent leather these days. I don't think we can afford them, but we still wear that. Grand Lodge officers will often wear tails as well, white tie. Although these days, if someone wears a conservative business suit, well, that's fine as well. We're a little more relaxed. I usually wear a dinner suit myself, and then in summer I swap to a white mess jacket. So, and if it's really hot, no jacket at all. We are fairly formal. One of the things which I didn't really go into, but I'm glad Zach gave me a segue then, is that something that stands out about Freemasonry compared to other clubs and organisations is that we wear regalia during our ceremonials. And it's the fact that Rotarians originally used to wear aprons as well. They no longer do. But we're one of the few community organisations or societies that still wear regalia. And out the front afterwards, while you're having a cup of tea, I've got a number of aprons there on display. They're old aprons from our lodge. Most of them will be well over 50, maybe even 100 years old. You're more than welcome to have a look at those. That's just an example of the regalia we wear in our meetings.
Yes, Chris.
The premises on Lindlock Road, was that exclusively for Freemasons to use? Because my memory goes back to the 50s, a lodge called Rail, which is
Yes.
the Royal Agitavonian Order of Buffaloes. And my dad was a member there, and they had their meetings there, and they used to throw a Christmas party for the kids in there as well. So it was sort of subletted to other lodges.
Yes, the lodge room itself is specifically for Freemasonry, so Lodge of Fidelity, Gawler Mark Lodge, Mariners and Royal Arch Chapter. But our supper hall, we do let that out to other organisations, which is probably where the buffs would have met. Yeah. And we still hire that hall out to the public today. So so if anyone needs to hire a hall, hit me up, and we'll be happy to.
Yes.
Are the Freemasons exclusively for males only, or are there females involved?
Females can be involved in our Freemasonry, which is, for want of a better purpose, we'll call it mainstream Freemasonry. It is males only, but we do have a women's organisation that is included in that called the Order of the Eastern Star, which is for women. There are other lodges. There is a ladies' lodge in Adelaide. We don't officially recognise them, but we do have communication with them on occasions. And there's also what they call co-masonry. Again, we don't officially recognise them, where men and women are Freemasons together. So all of our ceremonies are basically the same. There's not a lot of difference. We just don't always officially recognise the other ones. But if women are interested in Freemasonry, there's certainly options for them. if couples want to be involved as well. So there's certainly options. I know in the United Kingdom, mainstream Freemasonry, which is generally termed the craft, they have quite some dialogue with the women's orders of Freemasonry, and they got two in the UK. And the interesting thing is that the women's orders of Freemasonry in the UK are growing, while the men's Freemasonry is sort of stagnated. So I think the men's Freemasonry are looking for some hints on, hey, your membership's doing okay, how can we buy into that as well? And I think cooperation is the key. And I think over time you'll see more cooperation, a bit like sport. You know, over the past few years, women's cricket, women's football has certainly started to come to the fore a lot more. And I think eventually we'll see that with Freemasonry as well.
Yes, Ross.
Can I just ask what the money box was for?
Yeah, so that was the treasurer's cash box. So yeah, big cash tin. I don't know why it was so big. They must have been loaded or something. But then again, if you look back, paper notes in those days were quite large. They'd probably been around that size. So don't know. But we didn't find any of that folding money in there, unfortunately. From a historic point of view, it would have been great. But yeah, fancy lugging that back and forth to meetings, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, how do you raise your money?
Most of we obviously our members pay membership fees, but that doesn't really cover our costs. So other money through hiring out the hall. Also, we occasionally hold Bunnings sausage sizzles, and we also participate in the Gawler Village Fair. We run an authentic Barossa Kransky stall there. And most of our spare funds, once we've covered our costs, because we pay rates and electricity and everything else like everyone else, once we've covered those costs and our maintenance, most of our spare funds go to local charity and benevolence. So,
Just a question. Do you have a point of recognition? If you travel the world, do you meet another Freemasonry? Have you got a handshake or a...
yeah, absolutely, Paul.
That's a real one.
Well, gee whiz.
I got
Yeah. Absolutely. That is another reason, and thanks, well, not just to test a character, but if we travel overseas, all right, we do get a letter from our Grand Lodge, a letter of introduction and everything else, but we can identify ourselves with our funny handshakes and a few words, although around the world that does vary a little bit, but most of us would understand. And any proud Freemason will probably wear a square and compass lapel pin or something to identify themselves. And it's one of the things I've always liked. I know that wherever I go in Australia or the world, if I see that square and compass, I've got friends. So even if it's just to say hello and have a cup of tea or something, but if you're in trouble, you can probably also call on them as well.
Yes, Jim.
Can you understand why there is that secrecy and that apparent lack of transparency? Because we've listened to you talk and you're within our community and you say you have the test of character and you don't talk about what you do, but how do you do what you do for the community? Is it that it's just you don't want to be acknowledged out loud to say thank you?
Well, thank you. It's a very good point. We're like I mentioned in the talk, back then around 1840, 50, the mid-19th century, we were probably a lot more open than we even are today. What happened was Freemasonry basically went underground a bit during World War II. Hitler, unfortunately, didn't like Freemasons. And I think it's something like about 15,000 Freemasons in Europe died in concentration camps. So Freemasons in Britain, and bear in mind that Britain, the United Grand Lodge of England is the premier Grand Lodge, they said, right, lockdown. We're going lockdown. Keep things quiet. Because Britain didn't know that they were going to end up under Nazi control at the time. And it's taken 70, 80 years to start pulling out of that. And we've realised that the secrecy wasn't doing us much good. So we've sort of returned, or starting to return to what we originally were in about 1717, basically a public organisation. There's some things, like I say, we don't talk about our funny handshakes and all that, and they really are a test of character, but you can look them up on the internet. As far as our charity goes, yeah, we've been a little bit quiet. We've always done the charity, but we've realised that too, that we need to be a bit more open about what we do donate to other organisations. And sometimes it's considerable amounts, hundreds of thousands. Just this year alone, I think Freemasonry in South Australian Northern Territory will donate something in the vicinity of about 1.5 million to various organisations and charities. So, yeah. Which is a bit odd, because yet they can't fund repairs to our roof, which is a story that some from St George's may sort of relate to. So yeah, but that's what we do, and we're publicising that sort of thing more and more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One last question, yes.
Just wondering, any opportunities coming up to actually look inside the lodge room?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so if anyone desperately wants to look inside the lodge room and inspect it, talk to me, and I can arrange a time for any individuals or groups just about any time. However, once again this year, on the to coincide with the Gawler Village Fair, we'll be having an open day in the lodge. So if you're coming along to the village fair, just pop across the road and say hi, and you're more than welcome to have a look around the lodge room and the lodge hall.
You might want to tell them they need to be blindfolded too.
Yeah, we'll lead you in blindfolded, yeah. Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay, once again, thank you very much, Shaun, for such an excellent talk on Freemasonry. Once again, I would like to say thank you very much. So, everyone, tea and coffee, and we've got special gift for you. Sorry about that. A gift for this. So thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you very much. I'm blown away. I didn't expect that. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.